have heard Ron Martoia speak before. Ron is someone that almost serendipitously that I ran into several years ago at a Catalyst conference in Atlanta, which the Catalyst conference were the cutting edge conferences back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And Ron was one of the featured speakers addressing a crowd of over 10,000 people who had gathered, and did an amazing presentation with his team from his church in Jackson, Michigan. So Ron has since left the church in Michigan and consults with businesses and churches, and he's been a partner with us for the last 2 years, helping us develop our discipleship pathway, among many other things. And I'm always thrilled at the opportunity to have Ron share with you all, because I want you to know he's somebody that I love and respect deeply. And if he says it, I believe it, just simply because he has the broad experience and exposure to churches all over the world. He's consulted in South Africa extensively, and the church in South Africa is really a vital church. And so I appreciate what he brings to us here in Florence, Alabama. So y'all welcome Ron.
Well, let's do this. Before I talk at all, I think it might be great for us to just hear from each table, and you can nod at somebody to say it. What was the top thing on the list of issues that need to be addressed? What was at the top of your list? And we're going to go all the way around the room. So, if you don't appoint somebody, you're going to get put on the spot, and you're going to figure out somebody pretty quick. So, let's just pass the mic. Top thing on the list. COVID, okay. Mac, how about your table?
Priorities with conflicting attendance with other activities outside church.
Okay. Attendance conflicting with other activities outside church. Okay, Calvin's table.
We just had the big elephant in the room.
Okay, gotcha. Fair enough. The human sexuality issue. Got it. Just making sure we're on the right page.
Reaching non-Christians and attracting non-attending Christians.
Got it. Attracting non-attending Christians. Okay. Second table.
Ours was taking care of our physical plant for some of the big problems we have.
Okay. Physical plant. Good. Fair enough.
No, we were back there. Yeah.
Okay, you were back there. They're punting.
Just relevance of the church in today's society and how we can forward the message of Jesus Christ and make it relevant to society, and try to get people out of the comfort zone they're in now. Everybody's busy. Why they want to come to church, why they need.
That's good. That's good. For sure. For sure.
One of the things we said was reintroducing people to church, people who may be in any church at any point in their life, trying to reintroduce them to church.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Excellent. Communication. Oh, okay.
We said making new members and visitors welcome and cultivating relationships with them.
Okay. Cultivating relationships with people outside church, make them welcome here. Okay. What else?
We have a lack of young people, 25, 35 years of age, and we need to develop activities and programs that will grow with them and challenge them.
Okay. Thanks. Next generation stuff. Good. Really good. Mike, Megan, you guys are going to fight over the mic.
Communication.
Say, when, two tables said communication. Say more. When you say communication, what did that mean? Finally! Somebody's ready to go. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well, for our table, we were talking about communication, not just from the clergy down, but also among the congregation and the laity, for opportunities to volunteer in leadership roles and things like that, but also just to know kind of a schedule of events and what's available, the happenings at the church and ongoing communication.
Oh, okay, all right, that's very helpful. What was the other table that said communication? Yeah, can you guys unpack that a tiny bit more, just so?
Well, is we put several things in there. For instance, knowing who is on the administrative boards.
Okay,
Knowing, this was a big one because we had somebody who, knowing the Sunday school classes
Okay.
and the differences in them.
okay,
Things that all of us should be comfortable in knowing.
okay, gotcha. All right, thank you, good. That's very helpful.
And what I would add is that part of the refresh would be new signage.
Yeah,
Because all our signage is old and out of date.
yeah, no, that's, yeah, signage in a church is super important. Okay, so let's do this. Remember, you've got to get those sheets in by the end of the night. They're going to be, all of it's going to be compiled, and they're going to go back out so everybody sees those responses, right? So, leadership will cull those and go through them. So, my job is to talk a little bit about how do we take vision and how do you become a carrier of it. So I want to start with a story. Shirley loves people, she loves to serve, and she loves coffee. And so in the late 90s, when we built a brand new facility and had a massive coffee bar installed, great big steel sculptures, very contemporary building, Shirley was the obvious candidate. And Shirley went ahead and said, I'm going to get baristas, I'm going to train people how to do this. This is going to be a big slam dunk. Shirley, loving people, had a friend named Lydia, and she had invited Lydia to church many times. Lydia had never been to church. Lydia wasn't interested in church. Lydia had no reason to go to church. She just wasn't going to go to church. But Shirley began attending because she was leading the whole coffee charge. She began attending our leadership meetings just like this meeting. And over a period of time, Shirley began to capture the vision. And one of the things we used to say, and kind of put out into the space, is that most people want to belong before they are requested to believe. And that caught and ignited with Shirley. That people want to belong before they are requested to believe. She had always invited Lydia to come to church, but Lydia wasn't interested in sitting in a chair, even though it was a very contemporary facility, very contemporary building, all of those things. And so one day, Shirley got the idea, and she said to Lydia liked coffee too, and she said, Lydia, listen, I'm actually not attending church service today because I'm working the coffee bar and I've got a bunch of setup to do and I'm kind of leading the charge. What if you came just to see the new coffee bar and help set up coffee with me? I'm not going into church. People want to belong to something before they're requested to believe. And so Lydia said, okay, I'll go. So Lydia came, and Lydia watched what was going on, thought it was really interesting, kind of helped serve a little bit of coffee, has never attended church, never been in the building until that morning. And you know where this is going? A few more times, Shirley invites Lydia to come help set up coffee. Not attend. Not yet. And Lydia over time comes 3 or 4 times, 5 or 6 times. 9 months later, Shirley grabs me after a church service and said, hey, listen, Lydia wants to come to church next week, but she's already told me if this is what Christianity is all about, she wants to be baptized and she wants to be all in. And that's exactly what ended up happening. Shirley had figured out how to grab onto the vision, which in part for us was recognizing that people want to belong before they're requested to believe. This goes to what Dale mentioned earlier, that people are looking for something that will add value to their life. For us, coming on Sunday morning and singing hymns and doing what we do, that adds value to us. Not to the average 29-year-old that has never been in church. Not to the average 42-year-old with 2 little kids who's just moved into Florence who's never gone to church. They haven't figured that out yet. And so the question that I want to ask you tonight is, would you become a Shirley? Would you become a Shirley? There's 3 parts to becoming a Shirley, and I'm going to call it the vision prism. Dale and I have talked some about this, but the first thing is you've got to understand the vision, and some of that began to be articulated tonight. Dale began to unpack that a little bit, talked about what's coming at the brewery, what's coming at Studio de Sol, began talking about, hey, listen, we've got to be the church moving forward because we don't know what's going to happen in 2022. We don't know if anything will be even resolved. We've been talking about the human sexuality. Dale and I were just talking about at least since 2008. It's still unresolved. So, we've got to start here. This is the first part of the triangle. There's got to be a vision, and we've got to begin to see it and understand it. And so, part of tonight was beginning to unpack that. But there's a second piece to this, and this is important, is it's learning as vision carriers to articulate that vision. It's not enough for Dale Cohen to do it. Because, and let me tell you this is really, really important to grab onto. What makes or breaks a church being able to grab a vision and press it down into the community has very little to do with staff. It has to do with this intermediate layer of leaders between staff and congregation. That's universally true. A church that's medium-sized that is going to march to being a larger church, it requires a growing group of vision carriers that can articulate, as well as the leadership, the paid leadership, the staff, the senior pastor, as we heard from tonight. It requires this growing group of people that with some fire, some passion, and some real detail, they can articulate the vision. So articulation, very, very important. And then third, there's got to be an embodiment of the vision, right? There's got to be the Shirleyizing of the vision. Like, I'm going to invite somebody. And you know what? I keep hearing people want to belong before they're forced to belong. You know what? I think I'm going to invite Lydia to just belong part of the coffee team. I think I'm going to invite Lydia to be a part of some of our get-togethers as we're doing training, even though Lydia doesn't know Jesus from a doorknob yet. But you know what? Lydia loves coffee and Lydia loves people just like Shirley does. And you know what? Her being able to be with Shirley, be with somebody that she liked, and being with a group of people she grew to like, after 9 months, never being in the church service yet, met all sorts of church people over 9 months, served all sorts of coffee over 9 months, was part of the team, belonged before she ever set foot in the auditorium and ever heard a sermon. Now, what does all this end up meaning? Well, I want to give you a little mnemonic device here to be reminded of what it means to see the vision and understand it, articulate the vision and embody the vision. First thing is you need to see it. Dale talked about it. He's put it in the bulletin. It's his signature line in the email. He says it every single Sunday morning, right? You need to see the vision. The second thing is you need to be able to say the vision, articulate the vision, detail the vision. And the third thing is you need to be able to live the vision. You need to be Shirley. You need to be Shirley. So see it, be able to say it, be able to live it. We're going to be talking about see it, say it, live it for I don't know how long, right, Dale? A long time. Months. See it, say it, live it. It is this group, being able to see it, say it, live it, that is going to make all the difference in the world on whether or not this vision gets carried wherever it is that we feel like we need to carry it. So let's start with the vision to see it part. Seeing and being able to envision is unbelievably important. So let me give you a little tool. Some of you maybe never even heard this term before, but you can search it online if you want. The Positive Psychology Lab at University of Pennsylvania under Martin Seligman's leadership says prospection is seeing the future version of yourself or your church in compelling detail and envisioning it repeatedly. This then creates the energy and impetus to begin behaving and deciding your way into that future. So they have done a whole bunch of research and they say, hey, listen, when you begin to envision a different version of yourself, when you begin to say, you know, I see into the future that I am fit, that I have a spiritual practice I'm currently not engaging, that I am leading a ministry area that I'm still dreaming about. When we begin to envision that, this is called prospection, what slowly begins to happen is that tape that CD, that soundtrack begins to play in the background music of our minds. And you know what the research shows? Is that slowly over time you begin to behave in line with that future picture. It's called perspection. So I want you to close your eyes for a minute. Just close your eyes. I want you to look out 5 years. And I want you to see the best, most energized, most whole, most settled, grounded, full of joy version of yourself 5 years from now that you can imagine. I want you to just picture that. Full of joy, a sense of peace, a sense of groundedness. Energized. The best version of yourself you can picture. It's the version Jesus invites you into, incidentally. More and better life than you ever dreamed of. And as you're picturing that, I want you to get in touch with how that feels in your body. If you became that picture 5 years from now, centered, grounded, full of joy, vibrant, energized, whole, I want you to get in touch with how that feels. So just with your eyes closed and you reflecting and you getting in touch with that feeling, just shout out, what's it feel like to you? Anybody? What's it feel like? Happy. What else?
Content.
Say it again.
Content.
Content. What else?
Relaxed.
Relaxed.
Peaceful.
Peaceful. Peaceful. Good. What else? Oh.
Exciting.
Exciting.
Refreshed.
Refreshed. Okay, so this little exercise game is very, very powerful. You can go do some searching online and some documents that can walk you actually through this. But what I want us to do is I want us to be able to think about how this works with us, because here's what's interesting. Tonight launches collaborative conversations about the vision. Us beginning to get a high definition picture of what does it mean for us to engage in these creative experiences with God Dale talks about. What does it look like for us to have the brewery experience? What does it look like for us to build studios of the soul? What does that actually look like? Because to the degree that we can begin to collaboratively envision this, is to the degree that we will slowly but surely begin to envision that together. Consistent conversation about the vision items Dale has shared, so we can come to know together and we can come to see together and to anticipate the shared future reality together. It is going to take 60 and 70 and 80 and 90 people that want to carry this vision forward. This is the missing link, gang, in any medium-sized church. As a church grows and it moves out of a single-cell church of 100, 150, it takes a growing group of leaders that can collaboratively see it, say it, and live it. It's going to take that. So the goal is for you to become vision carriers. To hear the vision, to think about the vision, to collaborate with the vision, to begin to get in touch with the nuances of the vision, and then to be able to carry it. So the second part, right, the second part of the triangle, you've got to see it, you've got to say it. This is the articulation part. And let me say a few things about it, about the say it part. You need to learn to be able to explain it. Right? It doesn't do any good to say, I think I've heard Dale say something about, like, transformation is important or something. I don't know. Not very compelling. Pretty hard to articulate that. Pretty hard to explain. If somebody comes up and says, hey, listen, I'm thinking about going to church, Doc. Why your church? Why wouldn't I just turn into the church just down the road? What do you guys got? And we got, we have friendly people. Every church says they have friendly people. Have you ever met them that said, you know what, we have terrible people. We're not friendly. We hate people. We don't like people. No church ever said it, right? But you know what's unique? Our vision. Our vision. That's what God has called us to do right here, right now, in this time, right? So we need to be able to really explain it. We need to get granular enough to understand what this thing is really about so that we can go ahead and move forward with it. But here's the next thing. We also need to be able to defend it. What do you mean, Ron? Well, let me just give you a quick news flash. People that disagree or don't understand the vision, don't go to the head shed and file that complaint. You know who they go to? You. Leaders. You know what? I heard Dale's talking about something about the brewery. What in the world? Now, you know what? We have the opportunity to say, oh, listen, yeah, I got you. I understand what you're talking about. You know what? We were in a leadership meeting. I actually understand what that's about. Let me tell you about it. Or I could easily say, yeah, I heard about it too. No idea. What crazy Right? Isn't this what happens? These are the meetings after the meetings. Right? The meetings at the trunk of the cars after the meetings. Right? The meetings walking out the doors after the meetings. So what about defending the vision? Well, I want you to think about, these are the 5 Ds. These are the big 5 Ds. Disagreement. I don't know if I like the vision. Okay, well, that's okay. But you know what? As leaders, we're going to have to go ahead and articulate the vision to people that don't get it. They might even disagree and say, hey, listen, you need to know this is where we're going. Now, again, right, free country, if you don't like the vision, you don't have to be here. Did I just say that out loud? I think I did. If God has said we're here to make disciples for the transformation of the world, if that's the United Methodist mission statement, and we are trying to articulate that, we're going to have to really get on board with how do we handle disagreement as leaders? What about disguised representatives? You know what I mean by this? Listen, Dale, you know, now, some people have been talking to me. Now, I can't give you any names. But I just want to let you know, Dale, that there's some people that are kind of, do you know what? I coach and train churches every day of my life. Do you know what I do? I tell those pastors, I never take anonymous feedback like that with any more than just a teeny grain of salt. Because do you know who I'm usually talking to? The person who has the gripe. Who doesn't have the courage to be honest. Disguised representatives. We're going to have to deal. You're going to hear this. You're going to hear this. You know what? I really can't tell you who, but Sarah, you know, there's some people that are. And Sarah's going to have the opportunity to say, well, listen, let me help you understand this. Let me help unpack this with you. Let me help you get this. Right? Let me give you another one of the D's. Discontent. I'm just kind of discontent with the church in general. Well, a lot of people are discontent with the church in general, right? Dale gave us all sorts of reasons why the church in general was suffering. There's a lot of cultural dynamics that we're up against. Just the church in America. We're struggling, right? The church is no longer the epicenter of cultural conversation. We're in the center of the town square, but we're on the margins of the conversation. Right?
Amen.
We're no longer, when the doors open, people flock in. We're past that. That died in the 1960s, gang. It really did. So we're going to have to figure out how do we deal with discontent. What about disgruntled people? What are we going to do in our congregation with disgruntled people who go, you know what, I'm really not happy about X, I'm not happy about Y, I'm not happy about Z. We as leaders, we're on the front line navigating that game. That doesn't make it upstream to staff except third, fourth, and fifth hand. So that's going to be up to us to say, I've got to understand this well enough to articulate it and defend it, and especially true this last week, people that are disconnected. Some of these are people in the community that are disconnected from us as a church. They have no idea what we're about, and some of their ideas about the church are less than cordial. Right? Do you know that? Less than cordial. They think we're after their money. They think we're irrelevant. They think we're in a time warp. It's not a very glamorous picture, right? But it's up to us. Now, here's the $1 million challenge, right? Every single time you and I run into one of the 5 Ds, we have an opportunity to either pour gas on the fire and create an inferno, or we have the opportunity to pour water on it and put the fire out. That's our option. And this is what leadership's about, gang. Listen, every single one of us, we have a real life outside of church, and we know that we're not going to agree with every single thing that happens in our place of employment. True or false? Of course. We're not going to agree with every single thing that goes on at church. True or false? True. Nothing new about that. But what we do have to decide upon is, are we going to support moving forward what it is that God is doing here? In my staff context, as a church plant, the group, in our staff context, our staff knew this one simple thing, and we enforced it with our key leaders. And we said, listen, behind closed doors, we can disagree about anything, and we can even do it spiritedly, vehemently. But you know what? When we walk out that door, there's one story. And it's the story we agree upon. And if you don't want to support that story, you need to say now and forever hold your peace, and you can exit the team. Out there, we are going to defend this. In here, we can have the debate. Now, do you get why that's important? Does that make sense? That's smart business. That's smart church. That's smart leadership, gang. Us recognizing that as vision carriers, we're not going to agree with every single nuance of anything. Agree? That's impossible. It's impossible. But this is why rallying around the vision, not personalities, not programs, not projects, vision, becomes so important. Using the water can, not the gas can. Then we've got to embody it. We need to surely. We need to say, you know what? At some point in time, I can keep doing what I've always done, but if Lydia doesn't want to come to church and sit in the auditorium with me, how? And I know Lydia wants and needs what I've got. I know she needs Jesus. What does it mean for me to embody it in my context with the people? And it's going to be different for all of us, right? But we're going to have to understand it well enough to finally embody it. Finally do it. Several tables said we need to reach the next generation. We need to have programs and things that 25 and 35-year-olds would like. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. So the question becomes, how are we going to go ahead and embody that? How are we going to get that on the ground, right? So, let me tell you a few things about how vision spreads. These aren't unique to me, but I think they'll totally make sense to you, and I want you to start thinking about what you hear. The number one way vision spreads is through the stories we tell. The stories we tell. Do you know what? When Shirley had invited Lydia enough times, and when Lydia finally decided to be baptized because she brand new Christian, and when Lydia finally decided to formally join the coffee team even though she's been a member for 9 months, long before she even knew Jesus, do you know what we did? You think we told that story? Lots of times. Lots of times. Do you know why? Because what we illustrated was Shirley knew how to embody the vision, and we're hoping by giving you another illustration on how to embody the vision that you will learn how to embody the vision yourself. Right? It's going to be different for all of us. But it's going to take us recognizing what stories, gang, do you know what? Stories that churches tell illustrate what's important to those churches. Does that make sense? In my particular church that I was at 17 and a half years, almost every single Sunday, I won't say every, but almost every single Sunday, either through a video clip or through a person, somebody shared a story of Shirley inviting Lydia, and here was Lydia with Shirley. Why? Because if over 28 or 30 weeks of the year they hear a story, a faith story of a Shirley inviting a Lydia, over and over again, if they hear that story half the weeks of the year, do you know what the congregation comes to conclude? Apparently embodying the vision is important. Does that make sense? Obviously. Because we keep telling stories about it over and over and over and over again. People say, man, you tell a lot of stories about people inviting people. Well, yeah, you know why? Because it's like the number one way people come to church is through what? A personal invitation. Right? Number one way. If it's not a crisis, I mean, that's the second way. First way is personal invitation. Second way, I'm in crisis and you're a church I somehow know somebody at. It's the second way people end up in your church. So the stories we tell, the memes we repeat. What are the memes we repeat? See it, say it, live it. That's a meme. See it, say it, live it. We should canonize that. We should put that on the walls. See it, say it, live it. See it, say it, live it. We're going to learn to see the vision, say the vision, and live the vision. We're going to see it, say it, live it. The memes we use. I just gave you a meme that we used at the church that I was at. People want to belong before they're requested to believe. That's a meme we use. A little pithy repeatable that Shirley got in her head and her heart, and she says, you know what, how can I help Lydia belong before she's got to go sit and hear a sermon where she's going to be asked to believe something? That's a meme. So the little things that we say, Dale used one tonight that I think should probably, again, be canonized. We are going to be Jesus by showing Jesus. Say,
Share Jesus by
showing Jesus. We're going to share Jesus by showing Jesus. Should have wrote that one down. We're going to share Jesus by showing Jesus. Right? That's something that we should be saying over and over again. So people go, okay, I get that, right? You've heard this one, right? People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care, right? That's a very common, well-known meme, right? So this is another way vision spreads. We meme it. We repeat these little sayings over and over. Here's the second thing. The disposition we carry. Do you know what, gang? When I talk to lots of church people, and I do it every day of my life, all over the world, do you know when I talk to most church people, they don't seem very enthused about their system, their church, their programs, what it's offered. Say, how's everything in your church? Yeah, it's fine. It's fine? If I asked you, how was the restaurant last night? You go, yeah, it's fine. It's like, I'm not going. Well, would you go? If I asked you, how was the restaurant last night, Dr. Terry? And you go, yeah, it was okay. It's like, oh, that's clear vote, not going. True or false? True. And now Terry goes, oh my, Ron. Oh, I'm like, yes. Ridiculous, amazing, incredible. You know what? What's the name and where's it at? Because I'm going. Right? That's the disposition we carry. How many of you know you can see people on Sunday morning, and there's certain people that as you see them coming, you're like, oh no. Because they're going to suck the life out of you. Do you know any of these people? Some of you are laughing, so you know some of them. How many of you see other people going and you're like, man, I'm snuggling up. Every time I'm with it, it's a deposit. Every time I'm with it, it's awesome. You know some of these people. That's disposition. That's disposition, right? People want to be around people that deposit, that don't withdraw. Right? I don't want to be with people that are energy vampires, do you? I try to eliminate that from my life. Right? Eliminate that. So, but when it comes to vision, if you're not excited about what God's doing in you, in your church, change churches. churches. Yes, I said that. If you're not excited, something's wrong. Is that fair? Would you, Dr. Terry, if the restaurant was okay, are you going to go back tomorrow night?
No.
Of course not. Right? I'm not going back. So if we're excited about it, why don't we demonstrate that, right? That's what being a vision carrier is, right? Being a vision carrier is, I am going to carry this with me, and I'm going to get some other people enthused. Last thing, the questions we ask. The questions we ask. You know what? In first year, Christian college, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'll never forget Brent Hambrick. Never forget his name. You remember those people that, like, the first day on campus, you meet them, they're like a special person in your life forever because it was that indelible moment, like you're scared to death, it's your first, you're away from home, and you meet like 2 or 3 of these people, like they're a forever in your head, right? So I met Brent Hambrick in my first line getting, class note stuff. We're getting ready to get class programs scheduled. I don't even know Brent. We're just standing in line together. Brent says, so who have you shared Jesus with today? What? What are you talking about? I'm on a Christian campus of a college. I'm getting ready to go to... So who you talked to Jesus about today? I'm like, yeah, Brent, you, I think. Just you and me right here, right now. I don't know. Nobody. Do you know what I found out about Brent? That was his number one question every time you saw Brent. You know why? You know what was important to Brent? Sharing Jesus with people. That's what he was all about. So you know what? He just automatically talked about it. I wanted to say, shut up. Stop. Shh. No. Brent, every time you see, so, hey, Ron, yeah, how's it going? Hey, you talked to anybody about Jesus today? I'm like, no, Brent, not yet. Not yet. But you know what? Nobody was going to slow Brent down. You know why? Brent likes to talk about Jesus, and he likes to encourage you to talk about Jesus. So that's his first question every time. So what we know is the questions that you constantly ask, the stories that you constantly tell, the disposition that you carry, the memes you repeat, that tells us what you're pumped about. That tells us what you're excited about. That's how vision spreads. That's how vision spreads. So let me tell you what happens. When somebody has the opportunity to belong to something before they're requested to believe, when they get loved into community, do you know what happens? Nobody's got to persuade them to be a vision carrier. Do you know why? Because they're a product of it. So Lydia, invited by Shirley, 9 months in, she gets baptized. And she loves coffee. And Lydia desperately wants her husband, Ed, to find what she's found. Guess what? Ed's having none of it. Ed, up in the Midwest, is what we call a wrench head. He's into hot rod sports cars, 50-year-old dude, grease monkey all the way, but was all part of the cruising nights that we have up in Michigan in the summer. Woodward Avenue in Detroit, Main Street in Ann Arbor, Jackson, Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, all the way over to Chicago, where all these guys with their cool hot rods get together, and that's Ed's life. That's Ed's religion, that's Ed's God, that's Ed's everything. And now Lydia, she's been bit by the bug. She's been baptized, she's going to church, she serves on the coffee team, and she's trying to get Ed to come in, and Ed's not going to have anything to do with it, but he is a big U of M football fan. I know, it's not tied, I got it. And she says to Ed, hey, listen, I've got to go to church early to set up for the U of M MSU broadcast that we're putting on the big floor-to-ceiling screen in the auditorium. And I got to go set up coffee. Do you want to go set up coffee with me? Lydia's pulling a Shirley. Lydia's pulling a Shirley. And Ed's like, if you think you're trying to get me like in the back door to go to church, no, but I'll go set up coffee with you. You know what happened? He goes to the U of M MSU broadcast, sets up some coffee, still got grease under his fingernails. And 2 weeks later, he comes with Liddy to set up the coffee bar, even though he's not going into church. No, sir. Not doing church. And it was almost a year. I'd met Ed many times. He's behind the coffee bar serving coffee. And I think it was like the 10-month mark that I walked out of the auditorium, packed. And after all the visitors are gone, the lobby's empty. 9 or 10 baristas are clearing things out, cleaning things up, Koinonia Cafe. And I walk out, and there are 9 people holding hands, standing around Ed, while Ed weeps. Because Ed got loved into community just like Lydia did. And he was invited by his wife to belong before he had to believe anything. And 2 weeks later, Ed was baptized. Three months later, Ed's son was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I write about this in my first book. It's the last chapter of my book. And he said at our anniversary service, even though my son's in remission right now, I don't know what it would have been like to have faced the devastating news that we faced without having a relationship with God and without having a community that would stand with us and walk with us and weep with us and be with us. And that year, Ed said, I've got to introduce my wrench head friends to this thing called Jesus. I got to do it. But they like to do cruising nights with hot rod cars. So one day my assistant said, Ed Klaczynski's got an appointment with you at 2 o'clock this afternoon. And I said, about what? She goes, he wouldn't tell me. And Ed came in and Ed had a very elaborate plan on how we could host a car show with 300 hot rods on our property, where he could bring 300 of his wrench head friends to see what life with Jesus could really be like. So we hosted a big car show. And lots of his friends were there. And lots of his friends came to church. And it's because of one thing. Shirley figured out how to see it, how to say it, and how to live it. And that impacted Lydia. And that impacted her husband Ed. And that impacted Ed's wrench head buddies. That impacted their son with a brain tumor. And it is, I can tell you, scores of stories in my 18 years, just like Shirley. And so tonight, in the last couple minutes, there's only one question. Only one. When it comes to seeing it, saying it, and living it, will you be Shirley for this church? Will you explain? Will you defend it? Will you use a watering can when there's the 5 Ds come up of discontent, disconnection, and all the rest? Because this church deserves the next 200 years because of what God has done in the first 200. Will you be Shirley? So, Father, tonight, we're not even totally sure what it means for us to be Shirley right now, maybe. But we know there is a clear vision. We know there is a clear direction. Even in the midst of all sorts of cultural and denominational uncertainties. But you have asked us to see it, to say it, to live it, to be Shirley. So, Father, tonight I pray you would give sleepless nights where it's necessary. Where you will bring deep disquiet where that is important. Where you will stir the hearts and the souls of leaders here that need to take next steps, deeper steps, more committed steps. And that you would bring about such clarity of purpose and oneness of heart that not even the gates of hell would prevail. In Jesus' name.
The journey begins. The future is ours to claim for God. But it takes leadership. And that's why you're here. We need you. We need you to lead. We need you to carry the vision. Go in peace and serve the Lord with gladness in all you do. Amen.